So I had a phone conversation. This is quite a while back now. I'm talking to somebody on the phone. It was somebody that I knew quite well. And we were having a conversation about a subject that was very personal and real to me and that I had some fairly strong feelings about. And I did something that can be a little risky, is I just opened up and I talked about how I really felt. It was very personal, what was happening in me around this whole subject. And I knew it was a little risky, but I knew this person loved me and I was close to them and all that. So I felt like it was a very acceptable thing to do. And so I got done. I kind of just, spewed all this stuff and my perspective and my thoughts and everything. I got done. And I thought, you know what? I'm not saying anything. So I just went quiet. Because I anticipated that, they would, at the very least, even if they disagreed with what I'd said, at the very least they'd say, well, I hear you, I hear you. Maybe they would come back with some kind of response that would differ from my perspective, but they would at least give me a murmur of compassion. I expected that some kind of response would be coming, but I'm on the phone and seconds go by. They were stone silence. No response at all. And 5 seconds go by, and 10 seconds go by, and I'm like, I'm not saying anything because it's your turn. I didn't say that out loud. But it was amazing. In that little period of seconds, I went through all these emotions. I mean, like my first emotion was like disappointment, like, seriously, you're not going to respond? You're not going to say anything right away here because I just poured my heart out and you're leaving me hanging? And then I kind of went to this feeling a little rejected, like, oh, I get it. You don't respect me because this is the way I feel. And so you're not going to say anything to me. You're not going to respond back. And then I went to anger and I was just ticked. And I'm like, I just wanted to go, oh, I'll tell you, if you don't like what I say, forget you and everything. But I have some social skills. And so I kept my mouth shut. And I just thought, no, I'm not going to say anything. But finally, after them not saying anything for, I don't know, it could have been 10 seconds, which is a long time when you're waiting for a response. I just said it softly. I said, well, you're kind of quiet. To which they responded with nothing. They said nothing. And I'm just like, on the inside, I'm just like, this is unbelievable. And eventually, I just waited, and they're not talking. Eventually, I'm like, hello? And then I looked at my phone and realized I'd been cut off from them, and I had no idea. Anybody ever had that happen to you? And in that 15 seconds, I cannot tell you how exhausted. I was ready for a Valium. 15 seconds. I was just like all jumbled up on the inside. And just as I looked at it and realized that I'd been cut off, they were calling me back. And then they said, I didn't hear a word you said about all that. I got cut off right at the start. And I'm like, oh, I'm too tired to even talk. But I went on and I shared with them again what I said. And of course, they responded, well, all that emotion for nothing because of a communication breakdown. And this stuff happens. This happens between people. This happens in marriages. This happens in work relationships. Communication gets haywire. And sadly, this happens between us and God sometimes as well. Now, I said this 2 weeks ago when we started this series, and I really do believe this, that I think the truth about many, many Christians, this may not fit you, but I think the truth about many Christians is they never say this out loud, but they secretly kind of wonder if prayer makes any difference at all. Because so many times they've prayed, they've asked God, speak to me, show me what you want me to do, I'm asking you to come through on this or whatever, and it's as if God doesn't hear them or doesn't respond or doesn't care, or, whatever it is. And it's kind of like the dirty little secret of Christians, because they love God and they want to serve Him and follow Him and they believe in Him and everything, but it's like they won't say it. But does prayer even matter? Because when I pray, it seems like God doesn't respond. And many of us have had those feelings. And they're good questions. Why haven't you responded? Why aren't you speaking? Why aren't you talking to me? Why aren't you coming through? And those are great questions that I think we should be asking, and we're going to talk about those more in a moment, but I want to just turn a corner here for just a second, and I want to do something parenthetically. I want to give you a test, and then we'll come back to talking about prayer, and I think all this will make sense in the end when I do it. But here's the test I want to give. I want to ask a question of all the parents and everybody else. All right, because many of you have the potential to become a parent at some point. And so I just want you to think about this. And I know some of you are like, I will never be a parent. I hate children or whatever. But I want you still to think about this, because I'm going to ask you how you see the way you do or would parent if you were a parent. Okay, I understand some of you aren't. but how you would see yourself. And I'm going to give you a continuum. And these are not polar opposites, but these are things that are kind of far apart from each other. And here they are. So on one side, you have what would commonly be called helicopter parents. And you're all familiar with the name helicopter parents. And we call them that because they do what? They hover over their kids. Now, these are people that deeply, deeply, deeply love their kids. They're very passionate about their kids, and they love them so much they want to protect them. They want to protect them from the hurts and the pains and the struggles that come in life. And so they're often accused of being right there, hovering over them to make sure that they block or stop those pains because they don't want their kids to hurt. They love their kids deeply. Now, on the far other end of this continuum is what I would describe as the drill sergeant parent. Now, this is the person who is in total charge in their home, and this is their perspective is I tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, because I know better than you. And they love their kids deeply. And the reason they act as drill sergeants is because they love their kids so much that they know what the kid should do. They know the right way for the kid to go, and so they tell them that, and they will book no disagreement. That is insubordination. Your kid does what you tell them to do. So here's what I want to ask you. If you just drew like a center line down between these two, and I know some of you are going, I'm not even on that scale. I'm not either one of those. Just work with me, all right? Try not to be too miserable on this. I know some of you would never raise your hand. If Jesus was up here, you wouldn't raise your hand. I know that. But I'm going to ask you if you just raise your hand when I ask which side of this continuum you'd fall on. So how many of you would say, just be honest about this, I think probably I have a tendency or would have a tendency to be a helicopter kind of pilot. I love my kids. I want to protect them, all right? That's quite a few of you, okay. How many of you on the other end would say, I'm the drill sergeant type? See, there's a lot of mean, cranky people in here right there. The drill sergeants, the people on the parent, the helicopter side, they're like, yeah, bless your heart, that would be me. I would be on this side. But the drill sergeant's like, yeah, what do you mean by that? What do you... Honestly, I would be on this side too. Now, here's what's interesting about all this, okay? We're told by the experts, and I actually agree with this, that really neither one of these parenting styles are doing your kids any favor. And here's why. Because your kids, when you parent as a helicopter parent hovering or as a drill sergeant always telling them exactly what to do, they don't have the opportunity to make decisions themselves. Now, I look back in retrospect, realize my drill sergeant parenting was probably damaging in that way at some places. Because here's the deal. Everybody has to learn how to make decisions themselves. Would you all agree with that? They have to. And no matter how much you love them, they're going to grow up. They have to grow up at some point. And someday, they're not going to have the hovering helicopter parent or the drill sergeant at their shoulder to tell them what to do. They need to learn how to make decisions on their own. And here is why. Because when they make the decision and then they experience the consequences of their decision, this is an enormous growth potential for them in that moment. You don't have to be observant to know this. It is at the nexus of personal decision and the consequences of that decision. Right in that spot, that nexus, that connection where they come together, it's right there where you have your greatest potential for growth. Because it's in those difficult, painful things that often come, often as a result of you saying, well, I'm going to do this or I'm not going to do this, that happen, that you learn, that you grow. Now, I've said this. I said it 2 weeks ago. I'm going to say it again. Some of the very greatest growth periods in my life, where I had a growth spurt, if you will, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever, some of the greatest periods were the result of some of the most painful periods in my life. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Some of the most painful periods in my life. I look back on them now, and I would never want to go through them again. And I would not wish that on anybody. But I wouldn't change it either. Because I grew as a result of that in ways on the inside. And I want to grow. This is huge. And when I understand that what happens in that nexus, that place where I make a decision or even if something happens in my life, but it's not good and I don't like it and I want to get out of it, but I walk through that thing and I grow, understand that that's where I really develop. And I want to develop. I want to grow. And understanding that helps me understand what I would consider a number of crazy verses in the Bible that seem almost confusing. Like, here's one. The brother of Jesus, half-brother of Jesus, James, wrote this in James 1:2. He said, consider it what? Read it out loud. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds. I don't know how you read that, but that sounds nuts to me. Today's, the modern translation might be, when life sucks, be happy. Just consider it pure joy. And it's like, you read this and you're like, seriously? You're telling me that when everything's going south, when life is painful and difficult and all that, I'm supposed to be happy? Well, yes. Because it is in those places in your life that you very much would never go into on purpose and that you desperately want to escape from, that you often find the greatest growth and the deepest experience of connection with God in those places. And this is so powerful when you think about it. Those difficult places. Now, you say, what does all that have to do with our communication with God? I think you'll see as we go along. Because I think sometimes we misunderstand God. See, the contention that what we're trying to bring to this series is that maybe when you feel like God isn't talking to you, it's not God who isn't talking, it's us who isn't hearing. And I think sometimes what we think, well, God just doesn't care. He's not coming through. He didn't speak to me. He doesn't do it. I asked him, for this thing or that thing, and it didn't happen. And we think God is not responding. And I think sometimes we don't understand how smart God's parenting really is. And how sometimes when we want out, God says, I want you to walk through that because there, you're going to grow like you cannot believe. So we're in this series, and last weekend, Joel started us looking at the template for prayer that Jesus gives his disciples, which is so powerful. And he starts basically by saying, this is how you pray. Most of you are familiar with this prayer. Even if you were not raised in, if you were raised in Catholicism, you know it as the Our Father. Protestantism, you know it as the Lord's Prayer. And if you weren't even raised in that stuff, you've probably heard it. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be your name, your kingdom come, your will be done, all that stuff. And so you know that. And Jesus teaches this prayer. So last week Joel talked about this, where he starts us when we're communicating with God is to have a spirit of gratitude. Hallowed, holy, worthy of praise is your name. So we come to him and we acknowledge who he is and how he's blessed us, even in our difficult times. And then we come to the second place in this, where he begins to talk about what I call prayer of petition. And I want you to see this. So this is a portion. It's there somewhere. There it is. This is a portion of the prayer, not all of it. But here Jesus speaking says, this then is how you should pray. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. So that's the part Joel talked about last week. By the way, if you weren't here, listen to the podcast or watch it online. And then he goes on, and I underline the part that I want to talk about today. Your kingdom come. Your what? Your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And then he says, give us today our daily bread. Now, let me repeat something I said at the start. I do not believe that the prayer that Jesus teaches us here, this template for prayer, and this is not all of it, but I do not believe that this is a mantra to be chanted endlessly in hopes that if we say it enough times, God will somehow forgive us or give us what we need or help us. It is not an equation that we work through. It is not some kind of formula to get what we want from God. None of that. It's not that. This is a template that he gives us that really is talking about the spirit of how we come and communicate with God. So we start, as we read, with this idea of praise, and then we move, we have a spirit of gratitude, and then we move to petition. But if you read this, here's what's fascinating to me. We do say, God, would you give us our daily bread? So we do ask him for stuff. But notice how he starts it. It actually is more of a prayer of submission than petition. He teaches us to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. In other words, Jesus says, before you come and ask for your daily bread or whatever it is you need, that your wife would stop being so mean to you, that your boss would change, that you could get a better job, that you could help get your bills paid. Before you come with your grocery list of things that you're asking God for, whether it's one thing or multiple, first you come and say, now I'm going to ask for these things, but I want it to be clear. Above all, I want your kingdom to come and your will to be done. And what that means is that I may want this thing here, but if that's not what you want, if you want this, or if you want something else, or if you want this over here, in the end, though I want this right now, I know that you probably know better than me, and so I want what you know is best. And that is a heart of submission. So I just want to stop and ask you, do you ever do that? See, I think many times we come to God with our requests. We're like, God, would you do this? Would you do this? Would you do this? I just want you to be honest. I'm not looking for you to answer me. I'm asking you to think about this. Do you do this? Do you come to him and say, in effect, I serve at the pleasure of my King. You are God, I am not. And what you want in the end, even if it seems different than what I want, is what I want because I don't know everything you do. Do you do that? Do you come to God with this spirit of submission where you say, I serve at the pleasure of my King? I want what you want. Your kingdom come, your will be done. I'm here now to do that. And the implications of actually carrying the Spirit out are profound because it means that we don't run to God with our grocery list, and we should be asking him for the things we need. We should be asking him for the things that we want. There's nothing wrong with that. But before we bring the grocery list, we come and say, I just want it clear. I want this, 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 and this. I really think these are the best things. But you are God, I am not, and I know that you know better. So I serve at the pleasure of you, God. And what you want in the end is what I want. So if it's not this thing, then it's okay. I will follow you. I think what Jesus is teaching here, and this is profound, is that when we step into communication with God, I cannot tell you how important I think this is, that we do so humbly with a submitted heart, saying, I just want what you want. Maybe I want this thing, and I think this seems like the most intelligent thing right now. But I want what you want. And when we really submit and say, I want what you want, now get this, because it's really important. It means you're saying, I submit to what you want, even if it's difficult and painful to me. I want you. Now remember what we talked about. Where does some of the greatest growth in our life come from? In the difficult and painful situations that we desperately are trying to escape from and asking God to deliver us from. But in those, see, I think sometimes this is where we miss it, is that we're saying to God, fix this, fix this. And what God's will is and what God is doing is fixing you, not it. And I think we miss that sometimes. I think we think he's not listening, he's not coming through, he's not being who we need him to be. It's like there's nothing wrong with coming to God and saying, God, I really want this job. This is such an amazing thing over here. I want this thing. I think this would be the greatest thing. And I hate working in this place that I'm in right now. I don't want this. And this may be the best door for me. I think this is what I want. God, can you give me this job? There's nothing wrong with praying that. But you come with a submissive spirit that says, but let me be clear, this job, or some other job, I serve at the pleasure of my King. And if you want me in this job that I do not like and do not want, and if you say this is the best place for me to be, then that is where I want to be. You know, we talk about Christians, we talk about the lordship of Jesus Christ, and it sounds all high and lofty. This is where the rubber meets the road. Your kingdom come. Your will be done, even if I don't like it, even if it's uncomfortable. The implications, as I said, are astounding. And I think you could say, in many ways, that what Jesus is teaching is that when you pray, it's always about putting God first. It's always about saying, I want what you want, even if I don't understand that, even if I don't get it. And what it does when you do this, it changes you inside when you have a spirit of submission. I wanted this with everything in me. I prayed for this for 6 months. And it is not happening. And now I sense maybe that this is not what you want me to have. So I serve at the pleasure of my King. I serve at the pleasure of my King. And you don't do it with a martyr attitude. You do it in a spirit of submission. You know, the Apostle Paul understood this. Many of you are aware, he wrote much of the New Testament, that there was a place in his life. It was very difficult for him. He had something going on, and we really don't know what it is because the way he writes about it doesn't tell us. But he described it as something that was an affliction, and it tormented him. It could have been physical, mental, emotional, relational. We really don't know. But it tormented him. And what do you do when you're being tormented? You try to get out of it. Come on, is that true? I mean, if you feel tormented by something, you try to get out of it. You want to run from it. You ask God to take you out of it. And he did multiple times. And I want you to see this, okay? This is in 2 Corinthians chapter 12. Paul says, in order to keep me from becoming conceited, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger of Satan to torment me. Now notice it doesn't say it's God doing this. I think people get confused about this. Things happen in life that are dark and evil, that are not the will of God. But God, see, this is where we miss it, will use these things. So he said, there was a messenger of Satan to torment me. He said, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord to take it away from me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. This is not what you want to hear when you're asking God to deliver you from torment. This is not what you want to hear, but this is what sometimes you will hear, and this is what sometimes every parent in this room and listening online, every parent, you know what I'm talking about here, because there are times your kids come to you and they want something, and you know that even though in their mind it seems like the supremely best right thing, and they want out of this uncomfortable thing and into this, you know that what's best for them is they need to walk this out. So you do not pull them out of it. You let them walk through it because you know it's at that nexus that formation happens in their life and they grow. And God knows what we need. And I think sometimes what we're saying to him is, get me out of it. And he's saying, not yet. Because right here where you're at now, you are growing and learning. And you don't see it now. All you see is the pain. All you see is the torment. But the day will come and you will look back at it and you will see it. And what I loved about Paul was his spirit of submission. Because this is how Paul responded after he says, God said to me, in effect, no, my grace is sufficient. This is a struggle. But my power, he said, is made great in weakness. This is what Paul says then. He says, therefore, right after that, he says, therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my what? About my weaknesses. So that Christ's power may rest on me. I mean, this is so much. I can get up here and rant and rave about this. We need to tell God, your will be done, even if it's difficult for me and I'm in pain right now. I just want your will. And I can get up here and preach this, but this is hard to live. It really is. It's really hard to say, you know what? I serve at the pleasure of my King. And as I walk through this thing, I want to be delivered from it. But most of all, I want your will. And if that means that I go through a season, see, God will take things that are intended for harm, that Satan intends for harm, messengers of Satan intend for harm, and he will turn them to good. He will use them. And God so often is doing this, growing us. And we're just saying, take me out, take me out, take me out. And he's saying, not yet. Not yet. I'm growing you. I'm no expert in this whole area of prayer. I freely admit that. But I believe this is one of the greatest keys to prayer that there is. It is a spirit of submission. It is where we come to God and we say, I've got some stuff I'm asking for, but I want you to know I serve at the pleasure of my King. You are God, I am not. You know best, I do not. And so I will follow your lead. And sometimes that means we walk through difficult situations that we don't want and wouldn't wish on anybody. Author Craig Groeschel tells a story of one of his best friends, a guy named John, who was diagnosed with something called tinnitus or tinnitus. And this, if you're not familiar with tinnitus, this is a very difficult thing. It's where a person gets a ringing in their ears, and in worst case scenarios, it's actually unbearable. It's just unbearable. And John was diagnosed on a scale of 1 to 10 as a 9.5. And a friend of mine, actually, I'm going through the book where this came from in my life group, and he's in the medical field, and he said, I can tell you that in the worst cases, in these places where people have a very severe case of tinnitus, he said the suicide rate jumps sky high because people just feel like they can't live with it. They take their life. So John has this, and John freely admits that many times he thought about taking his own life, but he wanted to walk this through as best he knew how. So at one point he finds himself at a specialist, a physician in Atlanta who is a specialist in this particular area, tinnitus. And the physician who is the specialist, this guy who's going to help him as best he can, he has this little thing, he says, that he either puts in the ear or on the ear. And basically what it is, it's something that makes a noise that's different. And what it does is, in effect, distract you from the ringing in your head, the other thing that's driving you insane. But then he looked at John and he said, but if you want to know the truth in your case, it probably won't be all that effective. And then he went on, and I want to read this to you because it's so powerful. Then he said, the best thing you can do is serve others. Because when you serve others, you tend to forget about your own issues. And John took the latter prescription as well as the former home with him. And he took that to heart. I'm going to start serving others. He and his wife started a life group, and they began to pour their lives into people, and they started serving at their church and finding every way they could to serve. They adopted a single mom and her kids, and they just gave themselves fully into doing this thing. Now, here's what's interesting. At the writing of this book, which I might add is a great book, and you should consider reading it. It's called Hope in the Dark by Craig Groeschel, and we should have some copies in our bookstore of that, but it's limited. But at the writing of the book, which was recently, he says that John says the buzzing in his head is still there, bad as ever. I want you to hear this, though. But it doesn't bother him like it used to. And though he would never choose the road or wish it on his worst enemy, he's actually grateful. Is that astounding or what? He's actually grateful because he has come to know God in a way he might never have until this. I am not contending God brings sickness, but I am contending that in the midst of the struggles and the trials that we face, that God often will use those to bring us to a place in our life that we would never otherwise reach. And I bet most of you have experiences in your life that you'd say, I never want to go through that again. But you wouldn't want to change it because it grew you. And that is what a spirit of submission says is, I want this, but I serve at the pleasure of my King. And I will pray for this. Paul went back and prayed repeatedly. I think we should pray for healing. I think we should pray to be delivered. I think we should pray for all that stuff. I think we should. But I think what we need to understand is that sometimes in the midst of it, when it seems like God's not talking, He is working and talking. But it's a different message than what you're asking for. See, sometimes I think we expect a prescribed response from God. But He loves us too much to give us the prescribed response. He gives us the truth because of his deep and overwhelming love. I know you want a different job. I know you don't like being here, but you are a light in the darkness at that place. And right now, that's where I want you. That's where I want you. I know it's difficult. Folks, let me just be clear on this. When I talk about a posture of submission, I'm not talking about being lazy. I'm not talking about a fatalistic attitude. Some people will interpret what I'm saying as that like just going, it doesn't matter, whatever happens, that's just God's will, and so just suck it up and try to live through it. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about being lazy. I am talking about you do what you know to do, and you work hard, and you can ask God, but in the end, what you're saying is I trust you, and I will walk through this trusting that you are God, and you know what's best for me, and you will work in me, and you will work through me no matter what is happening in my life. Amen? And that is a spirit, a posture of submission. I serve at the pleasure of my King. And if going through this will grow me, and that's what you want, then I will do this. Consider it pure what? Joy, brothers and sisters, when you face these trials. Why? Because God is at work on the inside of us. And when you need wisdom, if you're hoping that God will give you wisdom, and you ask for it, but you come with a spirit of submission and say, I want what you want, God gives it to us. And Scripture tells us that. This is James 1, again, half-brother of Jesus. He says, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault. It'll be given to you, he says. But when you ask, he says, you got to believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. In other words, you have to trust God. The truth is, sometimes when you know the will of God, sometimes doing his will is so hard. He calls you to forgive, and what you want to do is hurt somebody. But you know it's his will. I want this thing, but I know what you want is this thing. There's no question in my mind, in a room this size, there are a number of people, in a church our size, there are a number of people who are listening to this talk, maybe watching online, and you're married, and these days the premier thought in your mind is, I got to get out of this marriage. I got to get out of this marriage. You're thinking to yourself, get out now while you can. You deserve to be happy, and you are not happy. Get out of this marriage. And you are miserable, and it is hard to be in the marriage you're in right now. And you maybe haven't even said anything to your husband or wife, but you're thinking, I'm out, I'm gone, I'm leaving. Now you listen to me. And then you get quiet. Maybe it's just on the drive to work, and you have this sense on the inside that you're hearing God say, no. You have a hope, and you have a future, and you have joy in front of you, but it will not be through the route of running. You stay. And not as a martyr, not just going, fine, I'll stay with the jerk, I hate his guts, but I'll stay there if that's what you want. It's not that kind of a spirit. It's the kind of spirit that says, you call this is what you want, I will run this play as if I called it, even though I don't want it. And so I will love, and I will work, and I will strive, because this is what you want for me. Your kingdom come. Your what? Your will be done. And I know that's hard. Oh my gosh, I know it's hard. It's unbelievably hard. But I've seen this in my own life when I practice it, and I don't all the time. I'm going to be honest with you about that. But when I practice, I see it changes how you view life. People aren't as disgusting to you anymore. The valleys don't seem so low. It's not that you don't go through hard times. It's not that things aren't painful. It's that in the middle of that difficulty, you understand you are God, I am not, and so I entrust myself to you in this, and I know you're going to take care of it. It changes. Instead of living anxiously from day to day to day, what about this, what about that? See, I'll tell you something. We live in a culture where ownership is huge. We all want to own more. I want more, I want more, I want more. More pleasure, more experiences, more this, more that, more stuff. We all want it. But if my life has taught me anything over the years, it's that with ownership comes a burden. Anybody know what I'm talking about? You finally get that house you wanted, And then the water heater goes, the furnace goes in the middle of the night. Some crazy thing happens. There's a burden of ownership. I'll tell you how I have experienced it maybe the most in my life. I've been the lead pastor of this church from the day it was born until today. And there have been times, a lot of times actually, where I just feel the burden. It's just like, what are we going to do? How are we going to, we got to figure this out. And I just like, And then, and I know that this is going to sound terrible to you because here I've been, doing this all these years. But I can't tell you how many times I've thought, I wish I was back in plumbing. I wish I was installing furnaces again or doing roofing. I wish I was doing that. And I'll tell you why. Because I would bust it. I would work super hard when I did plumbing or roofing or furnaces or the other different kinds of jobs that I had. I would work super hard at those things. But at the end of the day, when I was done and I walked away, I was done. And if there was a problem at the job site, that was not my problem. That was the boss's. But see, when you think you own stuff, then you got to figure it all out. You got to fix it and you got to take care of it. And I cannot tell you how many times that God has kind of paused me and moved in on my negative thoughts where I'm like, I don't know what we're going to do. And God just reminds me, maybe you forgot. This is my church. You don't own it. And I'm like, seriously? Dang. I can go home. If this thing goes to heck, it's your problem? Yep. That's awesome right there. That's awesome. See, I'm not contending you don't work hard. You do everything you know to do. But then you understand that God is God and you are not. And so when you hit those difficulties or those hard times or those painful places, you carry a spirit of submission. I may not even know what your will is in the midst of all this, and I'm asking you to get me out of it, but I'm telling you that I'm starting with your kingdom come, your will be done. I want what you want. And if it's growing me right here, I don't want to miss it. I do not want to miss it. So you let it happen. Now, I said this already. I'll say it to you again. God is often fixing you when you're telling him he needs to fix this. And some of you are in the middle of something like that right now. And maybe you need to say, as I walk through this, I'm going to keep praying for deliverance. But as I walk through this, your will be done. Your will be done. I serve at the pleasure of my King. Do you do that? In fact, let me just ask you where you at with that. You walking your days out serving at the pleasure of God? Are you saying to him, whatever it is, I want what you want? Are you doing that? Maybe some would say, sitting in this room right now, here, or online, I feel like I'm so far from God. Maybe at one time you walked with God. Maybe you never crossed the line of faith, but you feel like you're so far from God. Oh, you feel like I need to change that. I'd love to pray with you today. You can take that step and just say, you know what? I want to serve at his pleasure. I want to walk with God. I need to give my life to Christ. And in a minute, we'll pray. Here's the deal. I won't make you stand up or ask you to, come to the front. We won't tackle you on the way out. But sometimes I think it's good when you need to get right with God, come back to him or come to him for the first time really and cross the line of faith. It's good to just be able to look at somebody and say, yeah, that's what I'm doing. So would you all do this just out of respect for others? Would you bow your heads and just close your eyes just for a few moments? And if you're here and you need to ask God, Christ, to come in and take charge of your life, or you need to recommit your life to Christ because you've wandered from God and you know it, I'll pray with you where you're seated. While heads are bowed and eyes are closed, just lift your hand up and make eye contact with me. Just lift your hand up and wave it at me. Okay, in the back, thanks. All right, guys, both of you. All right. Okay, awesome. Yeah, right there. Who else? Okay, all you guys in the back, okay, there. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anybody else? Just lift your hand up and wave it at me. If we haven't made eye contact, awesome. Awesome. I need to get right with God. This is now my time. Over here. Yeah. Yay. Okay. Awesome. Anybody else? Last call. Then we'll pray. All right. All the way in the back. Thanks, buddy. Okay. Awesome. So all of you who lifted your hands, heads bowed, please, eyes closed. Just, you know I'm not going to do this for you. I can't. You come to God now. Just on the inside, just talk to God. God, just tell him, in your own words, but just tell him, I make a mess of my life. I need you in my life. Just tell him that. I need you in my life. I'm broken. I need you. And then say to him, I ask you to come in and take charge of my life. Just that simple. I ask you to come in and take charge of my life. You don't even have to understand it all. Nobody does. But just ask him, come in, take charge of my life. And then say this to him, I give you my heart. I believe in you, and I give you my heart. Tell him that. I give you my heart. And if you pray that simple prayer, that is the first step of many steps that you will take in your walk with God. But that is a huge step, and today is a huge day. And we pray for every person that prayed that prayer here, online, who lifted their hands, even those who didn't lift their hands out of fear, but they want to pray that. They did pray that. God, we pray for every one of them that their awareness of you would grow day after day after day, and they'd be filled with a sense of your love and your joy. And all the rest of us say, yay, God, for people making decisions for you. It's an awesome thing. Love that. Let's stand to our feet, and I'll finish up my rant and send you out with a blessing. Yeah. We'll have people in front who'd love to pray with you. We believe that God works in prayer. And by the way, we'd love to put in your hand a book called 7 Basics, Help You in Your Walk with God. You can get it at the Next Step area, or you can text as you see there. And check out the Explore God groups. They meet on Sundays. It's like 4 weeks. Really good thing to do. All right. May you go with an awareness of God's presence with you in the hardships, in the good times, in the struggles, in your marriage, in your relationship with your parents, at work. May you walk with God and experience his joy and peace as you live and serve for the pleasure of your King. In Jesus' name, let's say together, amen. Have a wonderful day. You're dismissed.